Hey guys, welcome back and welcome to the first theme of the day. With me is Yona and I am Grubby. And we will be your coaches today for this DSCL Bootcamp. Our first two players are Ishiroku and Meow.
That is right. Ichiroku is a Zerg player, Meow is a Protoss player. We've already given them some instructions from the games we've watched while already being here. And we're going to now, I think, jump into a match soon between them and see if they followed the instructions and if they've developed from the previous games.
Now, one morning to kind of learn a new build order, mostly within their comfort zone, but also some new things, is pretty quick to pick things up. And playing in a new environment, which maybe they're not as used to, we're going to expect some mistakes. And there will be various things that we can recommend them to improve. Normally, we do some coaching. We may focus on various different things. We may still focus on different things now, but we're going to mainly look at build orders and how the correct or incorrect build order tells a story about you and what kind of intentions you are trying to achieve with your build order. So for instance, if you say I'm a late game player, I always feel extremely comfortable in the late game, it is more likely to construct a build order where you are safe so that you survive, maybe even too safe. Whereas if you say there's no way that I can beat a late game composition from race X, then we create a build order that is more fitting to that, and with all the possible reactions and transitions in between.
Yes, and also about army positioning and movement a little bit, even though that is not the topic we're talking about right now, what that does to your game plan and how it fits into your build order as well.
And there are a few things we wrote down about build order which we could touch upon. Mainly there's cheese that you either want to execute yourself because that's the kind of guy you are, that's how you roll, or the kind of girl you are. We have to be very correct. But also how to defend against it. There are some map-dependent builds, there are mind games, but you gotta wonder, do you want to create build orders which are transferable to tournaments, or are you always playing against friends and you meet the same opponent many times, or are you playing on the ladder? Each may require a unique approach.
This is very true. We're also going to talk a bit about consistency and about ladder, how a build fits into the ladder, and this is also a bit about the mind games. It has to be specific for the player. If the player only plays ladder, it's not effective to learn builds that fit into best of threes really well. We're kind of adapting the builds we teach them to the things they like to do, I suppose.
Exactly, and when you play ladder, you could meet the same opponent a second time or even many times, but we're going to assume for the purpose of theory that you will always meet a new player, that they will always have no prior knowledge of your play. And why that is important is because it allows us to pursue the most effective and most efficient course of having a certain kind of consistency, because playing with intuition and feeling is one thing, it can be good, but if that means that you play roughly randomly after a fashion, you will not understand why you lose and you will not understand why you win. Again, that's an okay way of playing, if that's what you prefer. But while we're here at the bootcamp, we're going to make a little bit of a wink towards an effective, reproducible, consistent play style, and that is why we will try to go for the most efficient path. One example, just now someone asked me, in Protoss against Zerg, is it good to go Zealot Stalker or Zealot Sentry? That's a very interesting early build order oriented question already, because you could always go Stalker and deny vision, but your ladder opponent might not need vision to do the same thing he always does, because he's that kind of guy, always going to go for Baneling Bust. So whether or not you denied vision doesn't matter. So the mind game failed, let's say, if you denied vision, because he already did something anyway. And then the Stalker is purely technically worse than a Sentry, for example. If that is the case, and we are pursuing a course of ladder consistency, we will more often go for the Sentry than for the Stalker. And if we go for it once, we go for it every time, because you're always playing a new opponent. Just one example. And the same for Zerg. If you go for a hatchery first, and you don't scout to get, like you could get cannoned, you are accepting to lose to a certain amount of players who try to cannon you, and that is not consistent, so we will try not to.
Yes. I think it's also important to note that we kind of want to move towards the professional way of playing, so we're trying to teach them effective ways of playing. But that doesn't mean that they have to copy directly what professional players do. Like, it could be standard in PvZ for a Protoss to always make the Stalker because scouting is so very important for the Zerg early on high level. But that doesn't mean it's the most effective way to play in Diamond League. So I think there always has to be a balance, and we're trying to find that balance for them, or with them actually.
Yeah, and also the way you play has to be adjusted to the level you're at. If you are really facing Baneling Bust one base every game, then it's also okay to first work your way up the leagues with a build that is based on one base. But we've seen these guys play. Diamond League is already quite a good level compared to a few years ago. When you are Diamond, you do watch pro games, you do try to copy, and so on and so on.
Yeah, they're actually very good. I'm
So
impressed.
That's why we raised the bar a little bit than if we were, for instance, to be coaching silver or gold, where you can still have a lot of creativity.
Okay.
Let's use blue and red colors.
Yes, blue and red would be nice. Okay, maybe something about the map. We're playing on Overgrowth. What is typical for Protoss on Overgrowth?
Overgrowth is pretty much the most standard map, so it's perfect for the theoretical illustration of what I teach my guy.
Okay. Well, okay, me too.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we're ready, and we can get them to get the white noise headsets up, so we can talk about what they're actually going to do, and we can start the game. Okay, so
Game has started. Players are ready, and it's underway.
okay,
So you can.
elaborate a bit.
What
more.
did you try to prepare your guy with?
I didn't try to tell him too specifically what to do, and this also has to do little bit with Zerg. It's slightly less dependent on build orders. It's still very important, but it's not as specific as Protoss, where you build a pylon at the supply and then a gate and everything times exactly out, so you have 2.5 sentries at 3 minutes and then you attack or whatever. For Zerg, it's more about when you make drones and when you don't make drones, and how you can make as many drones as physically possible to win the game. So I gave him some tips and gave him some instructions on what things he should or shouldn't cut in order to get more drones out, and of course some timings, and I expect it to go better at least.
Okay. So we both watched Ichiroku play for a while, and he had a pretty good hand speed,
Yeah,
pretty good mechanics, but so you tried to teach him a little bit about economics and when he can drone, yeah?
yes, his mechanics seemed fine. He didn't get supply blocked too often. His build order actually was very close to what I would do. The only difference, the only very specific difference was that he tried to mix things up too much. He both took gas and made a lot of queens, which is both fine to do, but it's not fine to do together. So I told him he should make a decision whether or not he wants a lot of queens or if he wants to take earlier gases, because he needs to do one or the other, or he won't have enough drones to saturate his bases.
And what that usually will do is that if he normally would have a lair or a spire at one time, instead it will come a bit later, yeah?
Yes, exactly. Everything delays if you don't make sufficient drones.
Alright, so we see that our Protoss player is going to be opening probably with a forge first. Of course, I know this. And generally, in StarCraft 2, I think he I think he was supposed to have made a forge, but he forgot. He'll probably send out another probe soon once he realizes.
Yeah, he actually queued it up, but
Yeah.
he moved it away, so I think...
Nerves.
Yeah, I think
Nerves.
it's like an actual mistake, but that's fine. It happens. I just hope he can pull it together and play a good game under distress.
Yeah. So he's gonna make that forge now. He will see if he understands the timings that it was hatchery first, but I heard he doesn't use the game clock that much yet, so it's still a lot by relative to his own position, relative to what he has, what the opponent has. But he sees the hatchery. Is he gonna scout maybe for the spawning pool?
I like what Ichiroku is doing. He's not overreacting. The probe actually went into his main and isn't building pylons in his natural. So he's actually going to do the ballsy move and throw it on the third.
Yeah, it's a good decision. What he doesn't know is that there's a late forge.
Yeah, so
he
he could still
believes
get cannon.
If there was a forge, he would have made a pylon already for the hatch first.
Yep.
So he made another hatch, and he's gonna get away with it.
So in this case, it's good, yeah. I think both players are in a decent spot with the early nexus and the early hatches, so it shouldn't affect the game too much.
But build order-wise, this probe should have cannoned the hatchery.
Probably,
that
or at
position.
least build a pylon to force drones off the line and force a spawning pool before the third hatchery. Like the forge opening, I think on high level right now, is not necessarily to kill the hatch first, but it's to force the third hatch not to be made and for the pool to be made.
Yeah, exactly.
And drones to be pulled.
Yeah, 6 drones pulled and no super fast third is an okay result.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't need the cannon yet, but he could make it already. He went for gases first. Maybe he understands that there was no early spawning pool, but he does need to start the cannon now. I wonder if maybe he forgot.
I hope he didn't forget, because that would mean he actually made a very good and smart decision.
It looks quite fine. It's going to be done on time, even if links were made right now.
Yeah, it looks nice.
All right, so basically we're going to look at what they're trying to do. The Zerg hasn't made gas yet. He has established that the opponent went for a Forge Nexus. Understanding everything about timings and build orders. When you see Forge Nexus, you know there cannot be aggression until minute what? 6, 7, 8?
6, 7, yeah.
7, 8. So he could at least drone non-stop until 6 minutes. And then he can start taking gases or doing other things.
Yeah, I think the earliest pressure is around 7 minutes. When you open gate expand, the 4 gate hits a little bit before 6 minutes. And when you open forge expand, the 4 gate +1 pressure that you would see in Wings of Liberty hits like a little bit before 7 minutes, I think. So there's a minute difference maybe, max.
I think more like 7:45 maybe could hit.
Oh, okay.
And that's from Nexus first. Like you see Warp Gate Tech now is still quite far away.
Yeah, so a bit after 7 minutes actually, or quite a bit after.
Quite a lot.
Yeah.
7:30 can be.
Yeah, it's so weird. I haven't played against this build in forever. So
it's not that good anymore. 4 gate from Forge. So, I see your guy took his gases, the Zerg.
Yes, and he's only making 1 extra queen opposed to the 3 extra queens he made last game. So I like the change a lot. I think that Roach Warren is way too quick, but I think he's just afraid.
Yeah, so he made his Roach Warren at 6:20, super early. There's a few players who do it like that too. Vortex, Saral, they get that early of a Roach Warren.
Yeah.
You don't have to use it.
It's good in this scenario because Protoss is putting on some pressure, so it works out. I wonder, the thing I'm curious about, if he is doing it reactively or autopilot. If he's reactively starting the Roach Warren early because he saw +1 getting spotted. If he did it reactively because he saw the +1 getting started and he knows that means it could be pressure, then I really like the decision to go Roach Warren that early. But if he blindly does it that early, I really dislike it because it's like 4 drones less, and that makes a big difference.
4 drones less, yeah. Money-wise, at least, yeah. And he has a lot of larvae, so it actually is like 4 or 5 drones less, and then 6 drones. So he goes for a pretty quick lair, 35. Oh no, normal time.
Normal time.
We have a quick third from the Protoss. He's following the plan given pretty well, the Protoss. His +1 is finished.
It's finished, yeah.
Twilight's a little late, but we see a very standard sentries and Void Ray Scout. Nice. This was supposed to be a hallucination. All right, so what is the Zerg going for? Like, what makes a Zerg decide Mutas, Roach Warren Hydras, Swarmhost? Is it purely preferential? Are there
I
some
think
breeds?
in PvZ, it's Zerg is not the reactive race. I think Zerg takes initiative in the mid game in PvZ. There are some things you want to react to, like not everything is viable against every Protoss opening, but in general, I think Zerg takes the lead and Protoss is forced to react and scout well. Like if you go Viper, you can go Viper against almost any build, and Protoss just has to react by making a Tempo Archives. You can go Muta against almost any build, and Protoss has to react by making either a lot of Blink Skulkers or Phoenix. So I think Zerg has initiative. So in PvZ, definitely it's a lot about preference.
Yeah, I think so too. The only times where the Protoss is really the decisive one is when they are doing all-ins.
Yes.
Like 2 base all-ins and so on. Now the Zerg doesn't see him coming. Is he going to freak out when he gets here on creep? We still see drones being made. 11 roaches are out though. Safety roaches, if you will. He's going to have to turn him around.
He also has a Spine Crawler at his third, so I actually think this situation is kind of scary for Protoss. He doesn't have that big of an army yet, and Zerg is going across the map for a counterattack.
Where's the other ship? He forgot to bring it? Yeah.
It's at his third. Well, in this case, it might actually be positive because he can put an overcharge.
I don't think he saw the roaches. Oh, he did. He did.
No, he didn't.
All right, so given the fact that there's a lot of resources and there's a spire, ideally the Protoss will want to make lots of stalkers, maybe go for phoenixes. He's continued to make probes, which means he probably can't finish it right now. He should not be able to. He's gonna have to play defensively. And he's gonna cut these roaches off here. Now this is a very small standing army from the Zerg, and he's gonna lose all of it. He's made a lot of mutas, but he still has 2,500 minerals with a limited amount of larvae. So we're looking at maybe Zergling muta. The Protoss has a very healthy economy. He's pretty much maxed. He's got blink and +2 finish. What everything has led up to now is that he goes to stand here, makes a lot of stalkers, and keeps the Zerg Mutalist at home.
Yeah, I think Zerg's goal was to buy time for Mutas to get out and try to win the game after that, but I don't think he was expecting as aggressive of a push as is happening to now.
I think this is a good decision by the Protoss to attack.
Yeah,
he's got
sure.
a nice army, his upgrades are finished. Ideally, with the minerals he has, he starts to cannon up one base, and he keeps attacking. He's turning around, and I don't like that too much. He's got stalkers at home, it's enough. And indeed, he keeps attacking again. Mothership core, where is it? It's right here, so he can protect one of the bases. A few cannons finished here, he attacks. And this is looking pretty good for the Protoss.
It is looking good for the Protoss. It's now important to keep the head chill during the base trade. If Protoss leaves too much Zerg stuff alive before he turns around, he could lose. And if he overcommits on Zerg side of the map and loses too much of his own stuff, he could still lose. But generally, this is looking pretty good for Protoss. Although Zerg's third is looking more and more defended, and I am a bit afraid for Protoss there.
Yeah, probably the Protoss will have to attack into the main. If he kills the main and the natural, he is looking pretty decent. At this point, he has to keep making probes. He is doing a good... there we start the probes again. He's doing a good job doing a lot of damage to the Zerg. The Zerg has no ground army, and Mutalisk alone won't be able to engage because the upgrades are good and this Guardian Shield. So the funny thing is, I was speaking to Blubnose, aka Meow, and he said his biggest problems is Mutalisk.
Yeah.
And that's why he always played Phoenix into Colossus style, so that the Phoenix would say, please don't go Mutalisk against me.
Yeah.
You're not exactly safe, but you hope that the Zerg feels...
it just makes Zerg feel uncomfortable to
dissuaded,
go with it,
yeah. So then I, quote-unquote, teach him this Blink Stalker Sentry 3 base build. And the cool thing is, when you do this, you start to realize the greatest counter against mutas isn't per se in army composition, but it's in timings and in economy. So if you have a healthy probe mineral economy, you can afford, oh my god, you can afford a lot of stuff and a lot of cannons, which allows you to do these kind of base trades. But if you don't have the minerals, for instance, you're on 2 base, 2.2, 2.5 bases, you can't attack and you can't do a base trade.
It shows very clearly why he doesn't like playing against Mina. So he's not able to divide his attention well enough, or he's not able to keep his head cool, as it were. You can see that he had a good setup to finish the game. He was in a position where it was very hard for him to lose, but he's slowly losing stuff left and right, and he's not properly keeping everything together. And thus now he's losing so much to the mutas that it's actually becoming a dangerous situation for him.
Yeah, it is quite dangerous. That's because he said he panics against Mutalis. And usually panic comes from the feeling of not being able to deal with the situation, not knowing the steps to deal with the situation. If he just finished roughly coolly, he would have been able to finish. He almost won, but he just ran into spines.
Yeah.
And roughly unforced error. A great game though to show what these guys learned.
Yeah, I think that was, a bit of untouched material in the game was the goals of both players. I think when we watched them play, they were lacking a lot of, how do you say, like a goal, like a end perspective in their game. They weren't very focused on what they were doing, and I think almost every player here has a bit of that problem, where they do stuff, but they're not very sure about what their actual goal is in their build and where they want to finish or where they want to go with their army. And both of the players showed a way better way of handling it by player A actually going for the attack with the Stalkers and going for the base trade, and the other player managed to delay the attack a lot by the counter attack, because his goal was to get mutas out and go for the base trade. And I think they both executed a lot better in that sense already, even after the small amount of tips they were given.
Yeah, I agree. I think the greatest gain by Ichiroku was to understand how greedy he can be, considering the non-aggressive
he had a lot of minerals. If he were able to spend all the minerals on links with an extra hatchery or better injects, it would have looked even better for him, and he might not even have lost all of his bases while doing a counterattack.
Can we talk to the players?
Yeah, go talk to them.
These mics?
Yeah, they got the mics, you got those.
We take this stuff. Oh, they got those mics. All right, cool.
Are they gonna go sit here, or?
If you go over there, I can fix the audio.
Talk to
I
Ichi
think we're just
first.
gonna give them a microphone. Give the other player the.
Hey,
Hello.
Ichi.
I think a good question to start off is what do you think you did better this game than usually, or what do you think went worse this game compared to usually?
Well, normally my ZVP versus a passive Protoss isn't that bad actually.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see a Protoss take an early third or play really passive and all that kind of stuff, I just play as greedy as I can, like no units at all, and just drone up.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly aggressive Protoss that I have the most problem with. But the best thing I did, I guess, is making sure that I put my roaches in the middle of the map this time. And once I saw his sentries at my third, I immediately attacked his third, so he had to go back.
Yeah.
Which gave me enough time to get my mutas out and do all the crazy stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you guys both played at a very similar level, where you both played relatively greedily and then you did a lot of correct moves. I think it came down in the end to one thing, which is that it's something that you both could have done. It was interesting because you made lots of spines on your third, which, given the situation, maybe should not have worked because there was some panic for your opponent, but you made sure to defend one base because it was a base trade. At what point did you realize it's going to be a base trade?
The moment he moved out to my natural and I was with my mutas in his base, I was like, well, he's not going to defend, so I'm just gonna make a lot of spines.
Have you been in that situation many times?
It's what I mostly do against Protoss.
Okay. So now I'd like to talk to the Protoss. Meow.
Yes.
Mark, well done, firstly.
Yeah.
How did it feel?
I don't agree, but no, I was making quite a few stupid mistakes, forgetting the forge, so I couldn't punish his greedy, double hedge before pool play. I didn't actually forget it, but I clicked on it and I clicked.
Yeah,
on
we
probe
saw
too
that
soon.
too.
Yeah,
We
I
saw
clicked
the
probe away too soon, and it didn't make it. So I was like, "Derp, this is stupid." But yeah, I made quite a few mistakes. I had like 1,600 minerals or something. I should have made a gazillion cannons everywhere, and I would have held it quite easily, I think. Plus, he depowered 4 of my gates, which was pretty awkward.
Hard to spend.
Yeah, it was hard to spend my minerals, so I should have just focused on placing cannons everywhere and just because I think I made the right call with going for the base trade, because I was actually I think that was the best thing that I could do at that point in time. But of course, I already talked to you about the panic that I mean, if I see mutas, I'm instantly like, what the heck is going on? And trying to do everything at once, it's really hard to do all of that stuff, at the same time. Because I walked into a spine forest with my entire army, so it's not that good as well. So yeah, I made a few pretty big mistakes, but I don't know.
I like that when you are self-critical, you also know what you did right. Like you say, I do think I made the right choice, and
Yeah,
I think so too.
think so.
And I don't think you made, let's say, stupid mistakes. Only, except
I
maybe
didn't
walking
bring
into
the
the spines.
Yeah, that was stupid.
But
yeah.
partly it's inexperience, right? Because I just gave you this build order, and I think you did it really well. I think you made the right decisions. The +2 and the blink timings were good. Most of the macro is good until it got really messy, and you understood with how greedy he was, that and with how few units on the ground, plus you killed the roaches, that you should try to finish.
Yeah.
And in the end, maybe experience of being in the situation, just defend one base, lots of cannons. You had some stalkers already, would definitely be able to
do that,
defend there.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I was in a pretty good spot actually until I really crapped on my.
It really looked like you
Yeah.
had very clear ideas of what you wanted to do in the game
Yeah, but
until the base rate started happening.
yeah.
It was like you weren't absolutely sure about what the correct step would be.
Yeah, because I clicked my army back at some point,
Yeah.
which was not intentional. I wanted to take the base trade, but I clicked it back for some reason. And that cost me like 10 seconds. So I made a few basic, play mistakes that correspond with panic, with inexperience, I guess, stuff like that. But yeah, I think that I really like the build that you gave me. I think I could work on this, and but I forgot the mothership core as well.
Yeah, I forgot to bring.
With the
Yeah, I
push.
forgot to rally it with the pressure, which was a bit stupid because if he would have had like 40 links, I would have been dead basically. But I understand why I have to do certain stuff, so this is good, I think.
The great thing with this build, which if you go for the Phoenix Colossus is different. Like when you go for, because that's what he used to do more regularly, the Phoenixes, to prevent the mutas from coming out as often.
Yeah.
You have a lot of workers. You had 66 workers, and then the idea, you have a lot of minerals, more minerals than you usually have. So you really can do that base trade, mass cannon up one base, and we didn't get to that point yet in the pre-show. We didn't discuss.
We didn't
that point.
actually do the differentiation from the blink into either colossi or defending against base trades or phoenixes or whatever.
Next time, if you're in the situation, and doesn't matter if you made some other mistakes the same or you did everything perfect, but you again have that situation, you have 7 gates, you have 3 bases, and you see it's like 10 roach. Like I said, if you see any roach, you can make a robo facility.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
You did make the robo, but once you see, oh, it's mutas, you don't have to use it. You can make like 1 observer.
I didn't think I...
You didn't. No, that's correct. You wouldn't want to like, oh, let's make 1 immortal because I already have. So that's good too.
For something,
And then, okay, then you see it's mutas. Ideally in that situation, you would want lots of cannons as soon as possible in 1 base. You would
so
keep.
you only defend 1 base, because I had the feeling that I could defend both my natural and my third if I had enough.
I don't like that because the muta count keeps getting bigger and bigger if Zerg plays it correctly. So even though you initially have enough to defend both your bases, it's about the end game. If he reinforces with links and shoves with the mutas and the links together, can you really have your army split and your cannon split, or do you want to have everything?
Because you're also warping in 2 bases.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now another thing to look at is you should give like a evaluation of how much units did he make to tide him through until Mutalis. If you had to give it like a rating, low amount, medium or high amount in terms of Ling Roach Hydra.
He had a pretty low amount of units.
So it's a low amount, which means the muta count
is pretty big.
It's pretty big. So he's gonna get a lot of mutas. It means he was pretty greedy. So it does mean you should totally kill him. But yeah, he's gonna get a lot of mutas. So spread out cannons won't work. Photon overcharge in 1 base, cannons in 1 base, stalkers in 1 base. It's gonna be great. You're gonna defend 1 base. You kill this whole natural and main, and the 3rd, 4th you can deal with them later as long as you have 1 base income.
Yeah, as long as you have enough income to support it. Yeah.
But let's say if you scout the stop. Next game. Too much. Yeah. All right.
Okay, just like 1 more minute because we've given him a lot of tips, and I think even though he won the game, there were definitely some things that could have been done differently or better. You had a lot of minerals quite early, and I think part of that is just because you drone very greedy and maybe took your gases slightly too late, like your 3rd, 4th, and 5th and 6th. But that's not that important. Having a lot of minerals is kind of nice in its own way. I think with your roach counterattack, you could have made a bit more roaches and a bit more links to make it more threatening. In this case, 1 cannon and 3 stalkers and a Photon overcharge was enough to bully back your counterattack. Well, if you have a force of like 12 to 16 roaches and like 20 links with it, it's way harder for Protoss to deal with that. You want to have enough that the cannon plus Photon overcharge plus warpins does not beat it. You want to have enough that he's forced back. So I think next game, if you do the same thing, that's up to you, of course. It would be very useful for you if you'd have a slightly larger standing army when you counterattack. Because if he hadn't turned around at the counterattack and instantly pushed for you, it would have been very difficult for you to even get your mutas across the map in time.
I agree. There was also a situation where you had like 90 supply, you had 50. But you still came back because they all died to the spines. Of
Yeah.
course, you had a lot of spines, but if you went back, dead.
Really? It was
Yeah.
that much of it?
Yeah, he didn't have any like he didn't have saturation at his other bases.
Yeah, I
That's
thought
also
so too.
something that's worthy to think about. If you're in a base trade situation, try to save your drones and start using the larvae in the new bases.
You let them rally into your main because it was the closest hatch. One force field, they all died. Try to make everything that he does cost as much time
Yeah.
as possible.
But that's difficult because it costs you time as well. And of course, you're trying to harass, but still.
Let's go one more game.
Okay, let's go
Yeah,
on. again.
Enough talk, more than enough. Okay.
Bij de victory, de final zeg maar, meteen wegklikken uit victory screen.
Okay. Yeah. Well, welcome back, guys. We're going to go for a second game, and the cool thing is, never really done something like this, like to cast in this way and to set up the practice. Actually, I have done something like this, but it feels most like just practicing at home, like we would normally do in custom games.
Yeah. Feels similar.
So-
But then instead of giving feedback to each other, we're giving feedback to them from an outside perspective, which I think is actually even more ideal.
You never play with 3 people, like
Rarely, yeah.
2 of one race, 1 of another. Player A plays, player B, A, B, and then they keep giving each other advice.
Rarely, yeah.
Pretty
I-
useful.
Maybe I should, yeah. I usually just kind of play with one person.
Yeah. Yeah, me too, usually. But the rare times where we do that, it feels very much like this. And okay, now you do this, you do this.
Yeah, I
Pretty
remember
cool.
before, like when I was slightly worse, and you had more, like I had more of a community to play with because there were more people at low GM and high master level. We used to do this and go into the games, and everyone plays against everyone, and it would give this similar kind of feel. But now I don't have the same community around me with that are similar levels, so it's hard to recreate.
Yeah.
And not
I
everyone
see.
likes spending time watching games and whatever.
Yeah, that's true. You'll be 50% watching, so. So next game, Nimbus.
I think this map is very interesting for PvZ, mainly because I don't think it's that great for Muta, unless it's cross.
This is a great Swarmos map.
It's a great Swarmos map, but for Muta, I really don't like this map that much because it feels very hard to kind of get angles to harass in,
And it's a small map.
and it's actually like surprisingly small because the way the thirds are positioned.
Actually, it's the tiniest map there is, and everyone thinks it's the biggest. Or the second biggest.
Well, yeah, I make the mistake too.
Yeah. It's actually the shortest rush distance of any map. 38 seconds from ramp to ramp. Whereas other maps are between 62 to 51 seconds.
Yes.
So it's quite a lot shorter.
It has a lot, like from main to main, right? Because from for other
Yeah.
timings, it doesn't change that
Main
much. I
adds
think.
2-3 seconds. Main adds like 2-3 seconds. So if it's 38, or
Yeah.
like 42, whatever.
So how I understand it, because I haven't seen these statistics you're speaking of. But the way I understand it, so like 1 base all-ins would arrive a lot quicker, but for 2 base stuff and 3 base stuff, the difference isn't as big, right?
What do you mean?
So from main base to main base, the rush distance is the smallest of any map.
Yeah.
But from once the natural is up on other maps, maybe the rush distance is similar because the natural base in other maps makes the rush distance closer, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's like your natural is your main. That's true.
Yeah. So 1 base all-ins are very quick, but 2 base all-ins are not that different.
Well,
maybe?
2 base still. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's mostly the circling. Yeah.
Yeah, the early pools and
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
It's early pools, Marines, Reapers. Those come quick.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. So we see a hatchery first by Ichiroku, and he double scouts with Overlord. The Protoss went for a Forge Scout, finds the opponent first, sees no spawning pool. Did he see everything? No, there could be a pool, but he sees the hatch. So he could either cannon or fake cannon.
Okay. I like him pulling 2 drones, and he's using his second drone intelligently. I talked about this with him, and he was like, "Yeah, but what if he just gets 4 pylons and blocks his probe in? You know?"
Yeah.
And I told him, if you pull 2 probes, it's important. 2 drones. It's important to predict where the pylons are going to go and move ahead of the probe with one drone. And he did that very well and actually blocked the Pro S player from attempting a cannon rush.
Yeah.
What otherwise would be a very difficult position for Zerg.
Yeah, that's true. The Protoss could have cannoned, but we didn't talk about it, so it's not part of his bag of tricks yet. That's fine. It's not necessary to stay in the game or anything. He's now checking the third. He did make cannon before gateway, which, given the situation, was not necessary.
Yeah,
Build
definitely.
order-wise, it's inefficient. It's not going to be the thing that makes him lose,
But
probably.
maybe the cannon kills the Overlord. Oh no, it's
Close. If that was true, it would not
Oh.
be very consistent with it. Now, cannoning the third is not as great as cannoning the natural.
especially, especially this late.
At this point, you need gas, you need cybercore, you're going to delay yourself. The Zerg can just cancel and take it somewhere else. So I don't like it too much, but let's see how it works out.
It could work out if Zerg doesn't spot it, but if if the cannon finishes before the hatch finishes, then Zerg can just cancel the hatch and take a different third, and I don't think the investment was that worth it.
And it will. There's lots of little things you should know about StarCraft to optimize things. And one is that if you start the cannon after 1000 HP, it will finish later. And if you start it before, it will finish earlier. So he could add a second one now to have the option. But this one will alert the hatch and there will be a possible cancel.
Yeah.
Still, if this is the only investment he makes, it's not too bad.
No, it's not too bad.
Cybercore is relatively on time, his economy is working, he's chrono boosting his Nexi, his Nexus, and the hatch was cancelled.
Zerg is making the intelligent decision just to give it up. I like that.
Yeah.
I don't like where he's going with that drone though. That makes me feel very uncomfortable.
Does he know where the enemy is? Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting decision. You would think here maybe.
Yeah,
So
for
this
sure.
is kind of an aggressive move. The story of this build order is that he will fight to defend this.
Yeah.
He's not going to
For
play
me,
it passive.
this says either like a Viper push or something like that, like Roach Hydra, but like very in your face and like a continuous push. Like you used to have Viper pushes where people bring spore crawlers across the map and keep abducting. It doesn't happen very often anymore now that people have developed and people are way better at defending, and that it takes too long to get the spore crawler
And
across
the other
map.
option?
Another option is Swarmos.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
So Roach Hydra, Viper, or Roach Hydra, Tefl, or Swarm House.
Yeah, something that can stay in your face and keep trading.
What it isn't is double Evo Link style. Very likely.
Well, that's not the story it's telling. It could be anything, but the story, the base.
It doesn't support that
Yeah.
idea, yeah. I always say that finding out what the opponent is doing is like being a person in a relationship who needs a lot of confirmation. You see it and you're like, oh, you're doing this, but are you really doing it? Are you really doing it? Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you really love me? Just like that.
Yeah. Well, in StarCraft, I'm like that too. Like I can see things, but
Need
I
a
never.
lot of confirmation.
Yeah, I never trust my opponent. And but it's like,
You've been burned before?
yeah, it's like you know, Space Marine.
Yeah.
He plays PvZ very weirdly, and he's a good player. Like, don't get me wrong. I just get very annoyed when I play him, because he will start +1 attack regardless of the build he's doing early against Zerg. And to me, that always says you're making 4 gates and doing pressure, or you're doing Phoenix and then pressure. But it always speaks to me as pressure. And then he makes Phoenixes and takes a third regularly.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating for me to play against because I want to trust my instinct and trust my logic, in my own logic, but it doesn't end up working.
But you could still trust it for a while, make some adjustments against it, but not too much until you reconfirm that what
Yeah.
you thought is happening is really happening. That's what I try to teach people when I coach them too. It's like when you see something that should tell a certain story, like +1 means gateway pressure, you should make the initial preparations for it, like this, 3 roach and a spine, for instance, but don't go 3 spine yet until you reconfirm.
Yeah, that's
Because
what I try.
it's
but
okay to be wrong against a slightly unoptimized build like +1 into Phoenix, into Robo, but it's not okay to be very wrong about it.
yeah, exactly.
And the worst thing is if you say, oh, +1, it probably isn't warp gate pressure.
Yeah, and then
I'm
you
wrong
die.
in the wrong way.
It has actually happened to me when I whatever. Okay,
Yeah.
but
So the Zerg made 3 safety roaches, safety roach speed.
I kind of like that because his third is so aggressive that I feel like getting some extra roaches earlier than normal feels correct, because a mothership core and a few units can arrive at your base quicker than normal.
But he had no vision here, and
Yeah.
that's the risky part. He's making safety spine, but it's so close everything, and he's still working on this. This base is exposed. He went for 67 drones, and that's too greedy. Let's see if he gets punished.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to be handling it very well. He didn't transfuse the spine, which actually could have bought quite some time.
Yeah.
And now the roaches are here.
Protoss has a very favorable location here. Note that he completely stopped making workers. I wonder if that's intentional. No, it's not intentional. So he doesn't need to be making these 3 probes anymore. If we look at his money, he could be making non-stop units with the 7 gates that he has and chrono boost them as well. Maybe make another pylon here, make a lot of extra units. And he's making the units. Let's see, does he have any idle gateways?
1.
Yeah, 1 idle gateway. So those 3 probes were not necessarily prohibiting him from making more units. So those were okay. But if he makes more now, that will interfere with a full next Stalker warp in. So let's see.
Yeah, he even has like 1 or 2 idle gates right now. So yeah.
Yeah, still has 2 idle gates. So once he makes those 2 Stalkers, he will be at the, there we go, he'll be at the optimum efficiency of the setup that he has to attack. Which is exactly what he wants now against the Zerg, who expanded close, made too many drones, and played roughly late game. He went for, did he go for 6 gas or 4?
He went for 6 gas.
Yeah, 6 gas with roaches and no follow-up tech yet. This is a good reaction by the Protoss. And purely build order and logic-wise, there should not be anything else that he does except make a single observer and keep making units and keep attacking.
Yes, Zerg. I think Zerg was too much on the back foot with having his base so far forward and going up to 66 drones.
Feels uncomfortable.
It just felt like...
It's better to go like 52, 55 workers.
Yeah, if you're taking an aggressive base like that, definitely. And
just
even
make a sick army.
Yeah, make a lot of Roach Hydra, or make a lot of Roach, or like go Roach aggression into Swarmos. But you have to get some kind of bulk going if you take an aggressive base like you did.
Yeah. It was a good game. It showed a lot of stuff. I still think technically cannoning the 3rd is wrong.
Yeah, I
for
agree.
several reasons.
You don't know if Zerg spots it and when he's going to spot it and if it gets denied and if it's going to be effective, and it's delaying your opening, which is important.
So StarCraft 2 isn't poker, but it's still, when we talk about ladder consistency, it starts to get some of the same elements. We're going to keep this talk a little bit shorter. How much time do we have left?
We're just going to go in a couple of Twitter for questions, that's about 5 to 10 minutes.
We have about 5 minutes to talk.
5 minutes.
Alright, so...
There's going to be questions on the screen.
Questions on screen.
We have
from
5
Twitter.
minutes to answer questions.
5 to 10 minutes total.
So we're not going
Total.
to talk to the players.
Let's just talk to the players for 2 minutes and then do
like
some
just
Twitter.
some quick, but not in depth, I guess.
Me first, then you?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, oops. Hey. Oh, yeah.
Wait, I got
Meow, well played. We don't have a lot of time. We have about 1 minute. So I just wanted to say, you once you started the attack, you only made some probes, almost nothing else. I think it was automatic, just to make some probes. But for the most part, you finished it perfectly. I think you played strategically soundly. There's very little to comment about what's wrong. He had a base near you, you pressure, you're right there, you see it's going to work. Non-stop stalkers, you don't develop your tech. That was all very well done. The only thing that I think theoretically was not correct is to cannon the 3rd. You maybe heard it already because I saw you take your headset off. And that's purely about, when we focus on ladder and consistency, we try not to indulge in confirmation bias. Because it worked, that's why it's correct.
Yeah.
It worked, but I think it's not correct because what can go wrong? He can see it with Overlord, he can see it with Ling. He can see it, not show you he saw it, and then go wait till the pylon finishes to give you maximum disadvantage. You know, there's lots of things that can go wrong. Plus, he can see it early, already take a new 3rd. There's a big chance it won't be worth it, delays your Cybercore, delays your 3rd, and he already has 2 base. Instead of early hatch, he can make more drones on 2 base and then a hatch, and the economy difference is not as big as the tech delay for you. So try to remember that. Kinda natural or don't. And now we don't have more time, sorry. You.
Okay, I think for you, obviously you would have wanted to scout at the cannon rush so you could have punished it better. I still think if it hits starts hitting your natural and you cancel the hatch, you're not necessarily behind. But taking an aggressive 3rd like that is only useful if you use it aggressively. If you expand towards Protoss, you have to use it aggressively. Like cut drones at 50 and start making roach laying and start doing pressure to kill their third, or go super quick swarmos, but you have to try to use the fact that your third is that quickly. You can't play greedy 66 drones and get a fourth from that position, because you'll die.
6 gases.
Yeah, 6 gases. So, yeah, generally I think those are like the main points. We don't have that much time, so.
You got cheesed by something which maybe should not always work, but that's not your problem. And it's not really cheese, it's a bad word. It was a tactical displacement of your economy. But even if it shouldn't work, you should still be ready for it. So always have vision of your third. You reacted very well to your natural. 2 drones, stay in front and in back.
Yeah, that was actually very well.
But give your third the same treatment.
Yeah.
And then if you are going forward, aggro, and otherwise expand further back. But well done both. Thanks for the games.
Okay.
We got some questions from the Twitter.
Let's see, what do we have? What do we have?
Are the questions going to be displayed on the monitor there?
Just in case you guys are wondering what's the next theme, as we wait for the Twitter things to come in. Where's the camera? There we go. Next part is going to be scouting and countering. So we assume that you have some kind of build order, that you have some kind of early game plan, which is kind of what we deal with now. Then there's the scouting and countering part. We're going to have 2 different players. We're going to have 1 different race, I believe. I think we're going to have a Terran. No? A Protoss and a Zerg.
Yeah.
The Terran will come in the 3rd theme then. Okay, cool. We're going to have 2 different players, and we're going to see scouting and countering. How does it pertain to early game, blah, 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 blah. But here's the first Twitter question. If the Protoss was able to block my natural and third with a pylon while doing FFV, should I get pool, gas, fast, speed, or pool drones? What do you think?
Okay, if the Protoss was able to block my natural and third with a pylon while doing FFV, do I get pull fast?
So let's assume the Protoss made a pylon on natural, let it finish. Then he
And
made
then
a
lots of
pylon on the third,
pylon-
let it finish.
And Zerg went pull first?
He was saving up for hatch because he said, should I get pool? So he was saving up for hatch first. He was denied at the natural, and then he tried to make it at the third. If that's a hatch first still, that means you have late hatch, late pool. That doesn't make sense. As soon as you get cancelled, immediately, like as soon as there's a probe, even at your natural, and you see it's not going to work, don't even wait for the pylon to confirm that you can't make a hatch. You make the pool immediately. So normally the pool is at 15. Now it'll be at 15 and a half. That's how quickly you should make it.
I think the biggest thing is you should be able to, if it's a 9 scout, you almost always see it with your overlord. And if you see a 9 scout coming, the idea of going hatch first should immediately not be there anymore, because 9 scout is very popular with forge openings, plus it can block your natural straight up. So when you see the probe come across the map, always pull first, and if they do block your natural and third with pylons, you make a pull again. And maybe if your pull is super, super late, you might want to pull a few drones to start working on the pylon in your natural, because otherwise you get too delayed. But generally, you just wait for links and maybe keep chipping on it with 1 drone.
So when we talk about things like this, we have this plan, and we always try to make the smallest possible deviation to still be kind of on course. Also to learn. Because if you always react knee-jerk and you say, I'm now going to go Baneling all in, you don't really learn the space, the confines within which you can operate, within which you can comfortably operate. So the first thing you should try is to make 4 Zerglings, maybe pull drone, maybe not. You kill the pylon, make a hatch, kill the next pylon, make a hatch. If that always puts you behind, then you start saying, hey, maybe the Protoss actually doesn't have any sentries by minute X, and I can Baneling bust it always with 100% efficiency. But personally, I believe you should try the smallest adjustment first. If that doesn't work, try a bigger full swing adjustment when you're learning.
Always try to find back the original plan. Always try to like adjust back to it if possible. Okay, next question. Should you change build orders for a map, or should a build order be viable for every map? I think that's kind of like a question that every player will answer differently.
Yeah, let's say game plans are usually roughly okay on every map, but you cannot pretend that there are no differences in maps. For instance, if you're a Protoss and you scout at, we saw our guy just now, the Protoss, He did 13 scout on a 2-player map, which allows him to see anything he needs to be safe against cheese. But then he did 13 scout on a 4-player map, which you could say is the same build, but he was lucky to scout the opponent in time. If it was a 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10 pool, he'll be dead, because he will not be able to start a cannon or wall off in time. So you cannot follow the same plan on every map, but you can follow the same build per map each time when you play that map, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think for high level, it becomes more and more apparent that build order advantages make a big impact on the game. But up until high Grandmaster, I think for every race, for almost every race, it's viable to play roughly the same on every map. You might need to make small adjustments. For example, on a 4-player map, you might want to scout with 2 probes instead of 1 if you really want to be safe. Or for Zerg, you cannot always take the same bases, the same speed. With a probe coming across the map, you can't hatch first. So for Zerg, but you can still pull first every game if you like. So I think generally it's possible, and it's not even necessarily bad, especially if you're learning.
What we're trying to say is every river comes from a different mountain, but they all end up in the sea. I think, right?
Yeah.
Was that the last question? Jona at Chevelle SC asks, Jona and Grubby talked about how the Roach Horn was super early. What are the normal times for it versus Gate Expo, FFE, and Nexus?
I think I exaggerated a bit when I said it was super early, because it was actually kind of correct, because you saw +1 start. But generally, I think against a Forge expand, like the general timing is when your lair starts. So you take your double gas at around 6 minutes, your lair starts, and then you start your Roach Horn. And I think this is kind of how it's always for Zerg. You kind of start your Roach Horn right after you start your lair, unless there is very apparent pressure coming.
Sounds good. It takes a little bit less than a minute to get 100 gas. So if you start your gas at 6, lair starts at 7.
And your Roach Horn at like 7:15.
7:15.
Yeah.
This one was at 6:20. He saw an early +1, but he had an overlord there. He did not see chrono boost on the warp gate, so he didn't really need it that early. It was technically a waste.
But
technically, you should have it later, but it's not. It's not going to make you lose by itself, but it can contribute to it, even if it doesn't look flashy. I mean, it's very flashy to see your roaches die to force field, oh, miss micro, blah, blah, blah. But this can be a reason to lose as well. So the roach horn, it should have been later in this case. Against gate expand, it depends. If you go early pool, you can try to defend with only Queen Ling. But you can also try with roach, and then it has to be a little earlier, like 6 minutes sometimes.
We're going to go into a commercial break.
Oh, we're gonna go. Okay.
Going to go into commercial
Commercial.
break. Thanks for watching DSCL League. We'll be back shortly with the next theme. Thank you for watching.